And we're live. I wanted to thank you, Master Rorion, so much for taking the time and coming here with us on MMA Hoje podcast. Master, I really appreciate your time. How's everything?
Everything is amazing. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And it's great to be here, share the story, and ask some questions and answer some questions for you that I'm sure the public wants to know.
Yeah, that would be great. So there's a lot going on, but I want to go back in time and go over those like legendary stories and things that happen. If you live under a rock and you don't know Master Rorion, he's the person responsible for bringing the art of Jiu Jitsu to the United States back in the 70s. It's an amazing story. But it starts off with that. Let's get started with that.
And I actually did not start in the 70s. I first came to the States in 1969 to spend a vacation here, a short vacation, and stayed at the YMCA in Hollywood. And for security reasons, decided not to leave my cash and my return ticket in my room. So I asked the receptionist to keep it on the safe of the company, which he did. A week later, when I went to get some, pocket change for the daily expenses, I find out that the receptionist had stolen my cash and my ticket. So I called the manager. He said, "I'm very sorry. I'm going to give you a couple of bucks to buy a sandwich, but I'm not going to give you a new ticket to Brazil." So I called the airline company, and they told me at the time that it's going to take 6 months to make sure nobody used my ticket before they could give me a new one. Having to stay here for another 6 months, I didn't want to scare my father.
The airline companies did not get much better with time, by the way. So just to make a note.
The truth is, in those days, what counted is the piece of paper. Today, if you lose a ticket or if something happens, they can prepare you on computers and internet, all that stuff. But in those days, there was no such a thing. So in order to not worry my parents in Brazil, I called them up and said, "Listen, I changed my mind. Instead of staying a month, I'm going to stay for at least 6 months. Is everything okay?" I said, "Everything is amazing." "Well, have fun then. Thank you." Why? Click, hung up the phone. I had no money. I didn't speak English. I didn't know anybody, no ticket. So I started looking for work, and I found myself flipping hamburgers in a place called White Castle, doing the little mini burgers.
Yeah.
And then made some friends, and the trip was going to be a month-long trip, stretched to be a year-long trip. Very interesting experience. 17, 18 years old, 1969, 70. It was a great time to be here. And Flower Power and Jimi Hendrix and all that kind of stuff.
In California, right? That was the place to be.
That was a place to be indeed. So I had a good time, made some good friends, and actually I find myself having some tough times as well, because I find myself panhandling for a few days and sleeping on the newspaper on the sidewalk. But all that was, part of growing up. I learned very early on in my life that all bad things happen for a good reason, and I just had to adapt to that. And ultimately, it turned out to be a very good, interesting experience. And then I went back to Brazil after 1 year. Spent 2 years saving money because all I could think about is returning to California.
And you don't want to be broke again.
That's right. So I saved some money, came back in 1972, spent a couple of months here visiting some friends, and then went back to Brazil, went to law school in Brazil, graduated at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil.
Which is a very well established institution in Brazil. It's one of the best in the whole Latin America.
Yeah, so I graduated in law school, but I never practiced law. I always rather have the belt around my waist instead of a belt on my neck. So on that note, after finishing law school in 1978 is when I decided to come to the States, this time with the objective of sharing, Jiu Jitsu with the rest of the world. So I came back, first stayed with some friends of mine, and my friend's mother was an actress. She would go to work in the studios and I'd be home alone. But instead of staying home watching TV all day, I'll be washing windows, cutting the grass, cleaning the bathrooms, cooking, anything to show appreciation for her letting me stay at her place.
Sure. I mean, you're staying there, so you want to, and they're not used to that here, right? Like we both Brazilians. I'm from Brazil as well, and this is common courtesy, kind of like in Brazil, but.
Of course. And then there's no people that don't. In Brazil, we have the maids that clean up the house for you, but here we don't have such a thing.
Yeah.
So if I could do anything to help, I thought it was the right thing to do.
Sure.
Anyways, I started doing that, and after a while, I needed to find a job. And she said, "What do you want to do, Rorion?" I said, "Anything. Do you want to clean people's homes?" I said, "Of course." So, she started calling her friends all in the movie business. And Rorion does great cleaning work. "Oh, send him over here, over here." So the ladies are calling me to clean everybody's house up in Hollywood.
Gracie cleaning. Who thought about that?
And I'm a good cleaner too, by the way. I do a good job. Anyway, so the ladies start calling me, and eventually I landed on the house of a woman whose husband was the assistant director on the TV show Starsky and Hutch. And
Nice.
then, yeah, in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. So 40 years ago, I'm a lot younger. The lady saw me and said, "Hey, you're a good looking guy. How come you're not in the movie business?" I said, "That's right. How come I'm not in the movie business?" And then she said, "Why don't you hang up your broom, take some pictures, and my husband will take you to a casting office." So sure enough, I started doing extra work, in movies like Fantasy Island, Hill Street Blues, and Heart to Heart, and Rockford Files. All the shows during the 80s, I worked on everything.
Nice.
On Fantasy Island, when the guys landed on the plane to go to the island to visit, Ricardo Montalban and Tattoo and that guy, I always have my back to the camera because I'm the one putting the flower lace on the neck. Yes, see the old episode that I'm there. Anyway, so bottom line is that I did that for a while. As soon as I started working, I left this lady's house and then moved into some friends in Hermosa Beach, put some mats in my garage, and started teaching class on the weekends.
And that's the famous place, right? I saw once a post somewhere with a picture of the Hermosa Beach garage, a picture of where Apple started, and a picture where Bill Gates started his company, and just like it's this landmark.
Yeah, another garage that helped to change the world. That's for sure.
I think I saw one post of you standing in front of it too, right?
Yeah, I took a couple of pictures in front of the garage. Anyway, so I started teaching class at the garage, and then the first class is free. I happen to be a darn good teacher. People who come for the first class get hooked immediately, if not sooner. And then I said, if you bring a friend, I'll get you another free class. If you bring 10 friends, I'll get you 10 free classes. And little by little, the word started getting around, and more people would bring their friends over and stuff like that. It didn't take long until some of the students would say, "Hold on, my former karate instructor thinks I'm wasting my time training jiu-jitsu with you. He thinks karate is much better. He wants to challenge you to a fight. Would you accept that?" I said, "Of course, bring him in."
Of course. Well, that's what used to happen in Rio all the time, right? Like the different academies will go and challenge the Gracies, and there was no tournament, so that was kind of where things will get hot, right?
That's the roots. In fact, my father tells me that back in the 20s and 30s, when the Gracies started building a reputation of becoming famous in Brazil, people would come to their house sometimes at 10 o'clock at night, knock on the door at 10 o'clock, say, "Hey, are you guys the Gracies that take challenge from anyone?" They'll say, "Yes, we're it." And the guy said, "Well, I want to fight you right now." And my father tells me that sometimes he had to roll out of bed, choke the guy out, and go back to sleep.
That's amazing.
So it's been happening like this with the Gracie family for many, many years.
So, and that starts happening here too. And I just want to roll back 1 second because you touched on something very important, which is how good the person teaching needs to be. And we're going to talk a little more about that when we start talking about Gracie Masterminds. But it's something like the guy is coming off the street to try this new thing, and he has no idea he's going into training with Master Rorion Gracie, who is like, listen, there's probably like a handful of people that can teach the way you do. You're probably your father, your brothers, and that's about it, right? So
that's right.
It's like I believe in this a lot because I train with different people. I train at Renzo Academy, and you really connect with some instructors and some others. You love the guy, but it's just not the same training.
Of
right?
course.
So the way you taught the art and the way you brought it over, it's kind of getting big pretty quick too, right?
Yes, the guy gets addicted very quick because it's something, like you said, the way of teaching makes all the difference. There's a certain teaching methodology, in fact, that my father developed. It helps anybody. Anybody can do jiu-jitsu. I don't care how good of a shape you are, how strong, how fast, how coordinated or uncoordinated anybody can be. If you know what you're doing as a teacher, the message will come across and the guys are going to love it.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we had those challenge matches, started happening first in the late 70s and stuff like that.
So different instructors from other academies will come over and say, "Yeah, this thing doesn't work."
The students would, start training jiu-jitsu, and the instructor would get jealous because the guys are no longer training with them. Yeah. And then they would challenge from martial arts to karate, taekwondo, wrestling, judo, boxing, you name it. People would show up all the time. On a 10-year span, I probably had hundreds of challenge matches against different students. Yeah, and of course, I would make a point of inviting my students to watch that. So, Tuesday night, 9 o'clock, there's a karate guy showing up.
And plus, behind closed doors is no fun.
Yeah. Well, it's no fun. It's a lot of fun because people never seen that before.
But you need that cheering too, right? It's like, yeah, talk about.
Oh, yeah. 100%. People love it. And the students would get reinforced on their convictions on jiu-jitsu because guys would come to try to, hit me and kick and punch or whatever. And because jiu-jitsu is indeed the most effective form of self-defense, I had the elements of embracing the guys lovingly, put them on the ground carefully, squeezing their necks a little bit, twist their arms a little bit, they tap out. And because there was no blood and beating anybody up like that, the guys were so impressed. They said, hey, can I learn this stuff?
Yeah.
And it says most of the guys who came to challenge me end up becoming students and friends of mine and helping to promote Jiu-Jitsu. So that's how the West was won. Little by little, one person at a time. Like I said, in a very humane way, because Jiu-Jitsu allows the practitioner to be very humane. Yep. You don't have to hurt anyone. You can control without having to hurt the guy. And that was a very positive outcome of this whole thing.
There's even a famous story with your brother Rickson, that this American wrestler, I think it was like the top American wrestler at the time. I don't remember the name, but he was in this college somewhere in the mid USA, and Rickson was on a radio show, and this guy came and said, "Look, this doesn't work. Like, bring him here. So they they filled like a college auditorium or something." And Rickson went and fought that guy. He was like a big wrestler, and Rickson used the jiu-jitsu, and they became very good friends after.
Yes. It was El Camino College, in fact. I had that on the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu in Action DVD. We were doing a demonstration. The coach was a really tough guy, was a national champion, several times. Rickson played with him like he plays with everybody else. And the guys had no idea what Jiu-Jitsu was about. So it's just another one on Rickson's list of victories. Anyway, so the word started getting around more and more and more. And like I said, after 10 years of having these challenge matches on the garage, eventually dawned on me that we're never going to end. There's 250 million people in this country. So I decided to create the UFC. That's when I came up with the idea of creating the UFC. And then because I want to do a different competition between different styles of martial arts.
Yeah.
Beginning, I don't know if you recall, the very first ones was a single elimination tournament. Where we have representatives of different styles of martial arts. They would fight each other. The losers would get out, and the winners would fight until we have ultimately one winner. And we got seven different tough, strong, heavy, the meanest guys.
The toughest guy in each martial art at the time, like the toughest kickboxer, and there was even a Japanese sumo guy. And
not a Japanese, a sumo wrestler from Hawaii, Taylor Tui.
Oh, yes. From Hawaii. You're right. I'm sorry.
So, and I volunteered Royce to go in there. Royce goes in like a little angel dressed in white, the lightest, the smallest guy in the tournament, and he defeats everybody.
There's something very interesting to talk about there, because many people know that, but it's still very interesting, because you had in your mind the jiu-jitsu, like let's spread the word, let's spread the martial arts. So this is how we're gonna get like all the possible attention to the art. So Royce was kind of picked by hand, right? Because you were involved organizing. I think Rickson was already fighting, and he looked like a bad boy. And Royce, he was like your average everyday guy, like not muscular. It's just like a guy that you can relate to, right?
You always feel sorry for Royce going in there. Skinny little guy. People say, get that kid out of there. And of course, Rickson was already fighting, was strong and intimidating guy. So the reason I chose Royce instead of Rickson, a lot of people say, put Rickson in there, he's going to destroy everybody. I said, of course he will. There's no doubt. But I thought that Royce would be a more convincing example of what the technique can do. Yeah. Rickson winning is expected by everyone to do that. You just run over like a train over anyone. But Royce, I thought, would be a better strategy, in terms of showing the world the effectiveness of the art. And it turned out really good, because once Royce did so well, the whole world woke up to that kind of thing, and everybody decided to learn jiu-jitsu. And then it
became like a cult kind of thing. Like people would go to like Blockbusters and rent that. He used to be on that section like with like a real death tapes and stuff. Like, and they have like, remember that, like Ultimate Fighting. I was like, wow, what is this? Like, let's go watch. It was amazing. I watched that in Brazil.
Yes. Yeah, it was really a turning point in martial arts history, because there's martial arts before the UFC and then after the UFC.
Yeah, that's what created the MMA term, right? Like mixed martial arts.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. That started the revolution. In fact, after the very first event, I got a phone call from the U.S. Army, and the guy said, listen, Mr. Gracie, we saw the little guy beat the big guy, we need to learn this. And they asked me to create a program for them, which I did. I kind of recreated the whole hand-to-hand combatives program, and it's been the official one for the last almost 30 years. And today, they're still training this, the FBI, the Secret Service, every major federal law enforcement agency in this country has adopted Jiu-Jitsu. And so it's been a very successful campaign on that.
Oh, for sure. And something I was doing a little studying to come, because, I mean, the podcast, the purpose of the podcast is just to have a conversation like you would have with a friend. You go out to eat and we'll just chat about whatever, right?
Yes.
But I mean, there's guests and there's guests. So I'm hosting Master Rorion Gracie. So I wanna make sure I have my facts straight, just so I don't say anything crazy, which will not be a problem. But I would like to cause a good impression, right? So I was reading through and I think something came across that I was amazed by. We talk so much about grappling and that guy's a grappler. It's a grappling competition.
But I think you're leading to the point that I came up with the acronym Gracie Resisting Attack Procedures
for Law Enforcement. Grapple.
Yes. Which is grapple. But, that's the course that I created for the Army and military and law enforcement in general, and that was embraced about 30 years ago, and it's very successful. And people, like I said, very positive outcome for law enforcement. They use the program because they have means of, subduing the suspect or the bad guys, if you want to call it that way, in a very humane way. So it's been a very positive experience with them as well, and great friends to have, of course, law enforcement personnel.
And so we started with Gracie Combatives, and then it became Grapple, and now both of them nowadays it's called GST.
Well, Grapple was a course that I created for law enforcement specific. The Combatives is the program for the Army,
for the military.
Just the military, hand-to-hand combatives program and stuff. Then we have the Grapple course specifically for law enforcement. We have the regular Jiu Jitsu program for everybody, for the average citizen. And then GST is the new name for Grapple, the Gracie Survival Tactics that we are using now.
Yeah,
it's the same concept, the same course. It's just with a shorter and more current name,
Yes, and I think your son Henry Gracie does a beautiful job spreading the word around in seminars, and he does like law enforcement seminars only, and I think he still do Gracie Combatives technique is still around. And
yes, of course, we all teach the program, everybody, and they teach it. I teach seminars as well, still my son teach, and not only us, but there's a lot of people teaching different military courses across the country and stuff like that. Jiu-Jitsu has just become a household name for everyone, and every major law enforcement agency has adopted some version of it. So it's been a very good experience.
Yeah, we love the Academy channel and Henner's channel. He's like, he gets like some real life situations where it's like, if that officer knew Jiu-Jitsu, he wouldn't be in trouble like that. And but it's the perfect example, right?
Yes,
because it's like. We were having I had a Silvio Bering, Master Silvio Bering here, who also does some work with public safety, and it's kind of in the same line, and it's not every officer or like law enforcement agency that's prepared to handle that type of situation all the time, and this is so important that back in the day, like 30 years ago. The United States military say, hey, we need that.
That's right. It was a very interesting turning point for them as well, because you see, they had the ability to understand the benefits of something like this, to prepare an officer or a military individual, personnel, to be able to deal with someone who's bigger, heavy, and stronger by using techniques. So the program that we have, the law enforcement program, that just one officer or one military personnel can deal with sometimes a much bigger, much heavier, stronger opponent. And that's really important. You don't need 4 or 5 officers to subdue one suspect. One guy, maybe 2 max, can handle anybody. And that's a very comforting thing for them. And I know it's very beneficial. So it's been a very good input for them. And the connection with military people in general is always a good thing to have. So you know how it is.
Almost every law enforcement agency it's familiar with Jiu-Jitsu nowadays. And it when you look back in the 70s and all that journey, and it's an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, I'm very happy with that. And like you said, more and more people are doing this. It's better to protect the officer, and then it's better to protect the citizen as well, the suspect. And it just makes the whole thing of the connection much better. And the more people we have prepared doing this, especially because nowadays so many people, they are not law enforcement, are training Jiu-Jitsu and learning MMA, so the officer should be prepared. So at least he knows what he's dealing with. Yeah. It's important for their safety as well. So I'm glad that we'll be able to contribute to that on that level. And then, like I said, there's a lot of people carrying on the legacy of the Jiu-Jitsu students and former students and everybody else carrying on. So it's been a better world because of Jiu-Jitsu, I think.
Yeah, what would touching on that subject, I want to talk about the Gracie Mastermind, because it's an amazing. I was reading about it, and because this is something, it's like a newer project. Let's put it this way.
Yes.
And I think it's so important, again, because this is something I can relate to, right? Like so sometimes your best friend, it's like my best friend, it's a black belt, it's a Gracie Jiu Jitsu black belt, and I train him and I love it. And then I have a very good friend who's also a Gracie Jiu Jitsu black belt, and I training him is not the same training.
Yes.
And you need that connection back, and I'm very into the I think the term is the basic jiu-jitsu. Like, you need to know
the roots, yeah.
Right? Start on the roots and know those movements 100% and apply those movements like perfect every time. And it's a very basic. There's no flipping and turning and spinning and crawling and going on a roof and coming back. Like, it got too fancy, I think, right? There's no.
Yeah,
we lost the basic, the root of it.
The idea of the Gracie Mastermind is to rescue the teaching methodology that my father developed and he started using back in the 30s and 40s, which is he understood very early on that the best way for the student to learn the move is if he, the teacher, could attack the students, show them how to do the defense, and then let the student practice on him. So my father and I did the same thing. Of course, we're the ones that play the bad guys, and I'm the one that the student throws on the ground. I'm the one that flex the arm lock on or the choke or whatever. So I'll give him feedback every time he does a move on me. I correct, hey, do it this way because it hurts my arm more. If you twist this way, my neck is going to hurt more. So I'm giving feedback on how to practice the technique on me. So that's one important aspect of it. Number one, instead of just putting two students to practice with each other, which is not the same thing. So number one. Number two is that
plus they have like 100 guys rolling on the mat. There's no way he's looking at every one of them.
That's right. So the second thing I thought was very important is that the idea back in the days is that every time the student comes to class, he had a chance to review all the techniques that he had learned prior to that. So the first class you learned 3 moves. The second class you reviewed the 3 moves and had 3 new moves. The third class, you review the 6 moves and add 3 more. So every single time you come back, you review all the techniques that you have learned before. This is what's going to help educate the reflexes on the student. So the idea is as more you do it, becomes second nature. And the fact that you had a chance to do that makes everybody become so you don't have to think about what you're going to do. So you respond automatically if you're attacked.
Which is, that's what you want, right? Like, you don't want to think about, because look, I'm a blue belt. So I know a bunch of movements, but I need that 2-second,
yes.
like I say, oh, okay, this is happening. Okay, I can do this. But in the real life, it's too late.
Absolutely, 100% right. You're driving a car. If a little kid crosses the street, if you have to think which one is the brake, you're going to run.
Yes.
So you have to have the conditioned reflex so that you can respond without thinking. And that only comes as a result of repetition over and over and over and over. So that way of teaching doesn't exist anymore because the demand for jiu-jitsu is so big that people find themselves without the opportunity of teaching private classes like I used to do in the garage. There was a point I was teaching 630 classes a month out of my garage.
That's amazing.
That's Monday from 7 o'clock in the morning through Sunday at 9 o'clock at night. Only private classes. And I had 80 people in a waiting list. In other words, there was a very intense, and the students are loving it, and I'm getting thrown all over the place and get choked everywhere because I know what I'm doing, so I can protect myself. So it was a good, positive experience. But the bottom line is that's what's best for the student.
Yeah.
Now, because of the demand today is so big, we have 20, 30, 40 people in the room training. The teacher makes more money. The students go there and spar, but they're missing out on the aspect of self-defense, which covers a lot of the standing up techniques. Of course, ground sparring is important, and there's some self-defense aspect to that as well. Knowing how to escape from the mount position or pass a guard or escape from a headlock. These are all important things to know and do and train. But you can't ignore the fact that the fight starts standing up.
Yeah.
You're in a bar, in a restaurant, somebody comes and grabs you a bear hug from behind. If you're not familiar with those moves, or a headlock, you're standing up, or a punch, or something like that, if you're not familiar with those, you're missing the boat. And if the teacher, which a lot of times happens today, the guy trains a lot, a good grappler, spars and wins a tournament, gets a medal, becomes a black belt, opens up his school. He never was taught how to teach. So he's going to teach what he learned, which is the sparring, the competition side of the house. Yeah. Which, like I said, there's some benefit to it, but it's not the best for the student. So they're missing
And
out.
sometimes this like black belt champion, sometimes he just needs to recognize that he's not a good instructor, and he needs to hire a good instructor, because it's not for everyone either.
That's right. Teaching is not for everyone. Absolutely correct, you were saying. Now, a lot of times people just doing that because the demand, like I said, is so big, and the students don't know the difference. They see Jiu Jitsu or Gracie Jiu Jitsu or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. They go and train. They think that's what it is. But they're being deprived of learning the essence of this stuff, like you said, which is the roots of it, which is the self-defense aspect of Jiu Jitsu, standing up and on the ground. So the idea is, in fact, I want to do the curriculum of the course is going to be this book right here. Gracie Jiu Jitsu, the Master Tech, which is my father's book. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am. I'm very familiar with that.
It's a whole bunch of all the techniques. So the idea of the Gracie Mastermind is to have a course called The Art of Teaching, which I'm going to be teaching that. And the plan is to divide this, which has 132 techniques in here, divide that in 6 modules, okay? Each one of them about 22 techniques. And the guy is going to come. We're going to get together with a limited group of individuals, up to 20 people, and then show them not only how to execute those 22 techniques correctly, but teach them how to teach the techniques. Because each technique has a bag of tricks that comes with it so that the instructor can present the move in a more efficient way for the student. He had to learn not only how to present the move, but how to protect himself on the process so he doesn't get hurt. Mm-hmm. So there's all these nuances on how to teach. That's what the course is about. So there will be, explaining how to teach the techniques. And then the guy has 4 days with me, 6 hours a day. And then we're going to have a break for 4 months. He has, during this four months, the participant on the class has to find at least 2 students, private students, that he can practice the 22 techniques he learned with those 2 people for 4 months. Now, 4 months later, we'll get together, review these 22 techniques, add another 22 techniques, and then the guy goes back and he has another 4 months to get the same students to keep increasing the number of the techniques.
So he's going to go and he's going to apply the techniques and teach those 2 the techniques.
Yes. I want to see how he's teaching the technique to the 2 students. Exactly. So every 4 months, we do this for 4 days. Okay? 6 hours a day. It's an intense course.
It's amazing. Because
22 techniques. So by the end of the course, the 6th module, there'll be 132 techniques. That's what the guy's going to learn. And then after the last one, he's going to show the students the same, keep building up the 132 techniques to complete the last 22 moves, and then send me a video of that student doing the techniques.
Okay.
At each chapter, at each module, the instructor or the participant gets a certificate of participation. He came and learned the moves. Got it? At each module.
For that one module, yes.
For that one module, perfect. By the end of the 6th one, he sends me a video of his student doing the whole sequence. Now, the video cannot be edited, and he cannot tell the student, like you said, defense against a club, defense against a punch. He's not calling the shot. He just have to do it, and I want to see the response of this student.
And it's amazing that because the video is not of him doing it. The video is to show how good he taught the technicians to the students.
Exactly. That's what separates the good teacher now. So the only way he's going to do this is if he follows the guidelines exactly to 100% to a T. Yep. So by the end of that, he sends me a video of his student doing all the techniques. And if the student shows the techniques within a certain time frame, without having been told what to do, in a non-edited video, then the participant or the instructor gets a certificate of completion of the whole thing. He's being recognized as a guy who can teach the program.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So that's the program. Now, on March 21st, I'm going to be in Miami at the Valente Brothers School in Miami.
Which is a beautiful school, right? It's amazing. We always talked about it. It's like, oh my God, it looks gorgeous.
Great place. And I'm doing on the East Coast because I want to get a lot of people on the East Coast. So I want to give them a chance to check this out. So on the 21st, at 3 p.m., from 3 to 5, I'm teaching a free class to anybody that want to come in and discuss and see exactly what the course is about.
That's a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity to learn from where it all started. And look, I'm very biased to talk about it, but I was in California last year, and I made the impossible, and we kind of like made arrangements last minute, and I had a private class with Master Hickson, and he was asking me and say, so what is your goal on doing? And he was like, look, if you just want a picture, you come here, we'll take a picture. I was like, no, master, I really want to do a class. It's like, oh, all right. So what are you trying to accomplish? I was like, look, I say, I'm a blue belt. I'm not trying to accomplish anything. I want to learn the basics from the roots of the jiu-jitsu, because I truly believe in that. And he's like, all right, so we're on. And that's what you're proposing here. And I think this is so amazing. It's an amazing initiative because people don't really know that the sport evolved so much that like you see like the very, very basic people. You wanna, it might even be like a silly example, but I was rolling in Orlando with Jacare, or like UFC fighter Ronaldo Jacare.
Yes.
And he was at his gym, and this guy was telling me all about this guillotine choke, and he said, "Look, the jiu-jitsu, it's like it got so modern today that people forgot about the guillotine choke. So I've been using guillotine chokes on everyone, and I'm catching like brown belts and like maybe some black belts too, because they forget about it. They just don't pay attention, and it's one of those basic roots that you just don't apply anymore. And I love the idea of how do you call it, like
rescuing
rescuing. That's the perfect word for it. Rescuing the art, right?
That's right. So the teaching program for the basic self-defense course, and that's exactly what's on the book. And then the idea is to, like I said, make it available for not only instructors and assistant instructors, but any student who's a dedicated student, purple belt, brown belt, or black belt, is welcome to join the class because they can see what it is. Like I said, the first class is free. Miami, March 21st, at the Valente Brothers Academy in Miami. And the location of the academy is between Fort Lauderdale and Miami International Airport. So if you're on the East Coast and want to fly in, be there at 3 o'clock, have a class from 3 to 5, and then fly back home on the same day. You won't miss anything. You get, if nothing else, a great opportunity for us to exchange some ideas, and I'll show what this course is about. Because the course is going to happen in August in Virginia, okay, Norfolk, Virginia. That's when the course is actually going to happen. This is just an introductory class, and everybody's welcome to be there. If you go to GracieMastermind.com, you can register in there, and then hopefully I'll see you on the mat in Miami on the 21st.
That's an amazing opportunity. I suggest everyone take the time and go, because it's not every day that you have Master Rorion like teaching a class like that, and with this one purpose too, right? To rescue the lost technique, let's put it this way.
The original program from the Gracie Academy developed by Grand Master Helio Gracie. You're not going to find this anywhere else.
No, it probably could wear the Indiana Jones hat, and it's like, I'm going to go into the rescue of the lost technique.
Yeah.
This is amazing, Master. Thank you so much. So I'm going to put the website on the YouTube channel.
Okay.
I'll list it over there, and I'll put the dates there so people go and check. But this is again, it's an amazing opportunity. Everybody should check it out.
Great, wonderful indeed. Yeah.
We didn't even talk about the Gracie diet, so maybe we'll do a second episode about the Gracie. Show the book. Do you have the book there?
Yeah, of course I have the book right here. This is the one thing that every person who does jiu-jitsu should definitely keep in mind. You can't be a champion in the mat or champion in life if you're not taking seriously your health. You can't eat junk food and think you're going to be a champion or not. You have to understand that you are what you eat, number one, and every food that you eat either helps to improve your health or is damaging your health. So if you just eat because it tastes good, you don't think about it, you're aimed to have an unfortunate end of life, because health is the trick. You have to be healthy. You have to think, how are you going to spend the last 10 years of your life? That's the question you have to ask yourself. And eating right makes all the difference. Uncle Carlos, who was not a doctor, realized back in the 20s the important correlation between good health and good performance. So in order to keep himself and the rest of the family healthy, so they could uphold the Gracie challenge against anybody, anytime, anywhere.
Yeah, no one could afford to have a stomach ache, right? So you have a bunch of tough guys knocking on your door, say, "Let's fight." It's like, my stomach doesn't feel so good. Come back tomorrow. Say, there's none of that.
We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the Gracie diet, I'll tell you that much. So that kept everybody healthy. And with that, he was able to not only improve the family healthy, but a lot of people, friends and students that approach him with different health issues, he was amazing treating everybody. So he never wrote a book. So in order to not let that legacy get lost, I wrote a Gracie diet book, 100% based on what I taught from him, I learned from him, who was a second father to me, by the way, Uncle Carlos, and then wrote the book. And I have seen the results. People, giving us positive feedback from all over the world. No more gastritis and heartburn and headaches and stomach aches and excess weight and lack of energy and irritable bowel syndrome. All that stuff is gone with the Gracie diet. So
even Master Helio Gracie, he's the perfect example of that. He was training and showing techniques up until you were telling me the other day, right? Like he was like 94?
94. I went to visit, last time I saw my father, I went to visit him on a ranch in Brazil. He was 94 and a half, 6 months before he passed away. I went to visit him on his ranch, and as soon as I arrived, he gave me a kiss and said, "Rorion, let's go on the mat. I want to show you a new choke I'm working on."
That's
amazing. And he kicked my butt at 94 years old. So this is what life is about. We have to live as long as we're young and then die. That's the trick. And that's what he did. He had a great life because of the diet, of course, 100%. And then it was very successful because he didn't spend the last 10 years of his life suffering, getting sick or nothing like that. It's like a lot of people that we love and care for are going through that. They kind of deteriorate in the end.
Yeah.
And the only way to make sure that you avoid that is by investing in your health now, Start thinking about that right now. Both books, not only the Gracie diet, but the Gracie Jiu Jitsu books are available on Amazon. Or, that's one place to get it. And of course, if you want to get a little more information about the Gracie family history and the legacy, you should visit graciemuseum.com as well, which is a great, it's like visiting a virtual tour of the Gracie Museum. I highly recommend that.
Yeah, I took a look. I saw Master Helio, the first gi that was made by hand by your mother. There's some amazing history there.
That's not the first gi. That was the gi that he used to fight Kimura for the world championship.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. That's the gi he fought Kimura. Yes.
The little one is my first gi, the one you see there.
Okay, that's right.
That's my first gi. But anyways, it's an interesting visit that you can do online. It's a virtual tour. It's very well done filming and stuff like that. People are going to enjoy it. 360 and stuff like that. So
that's nice. That's very nice. So again, Gracie Mastermind, March 21st at the Valenti Brothers Academy in Miami.
From 3 to 5.
Fort Lauderdale, right?
No, the academy is in Miami.
In Miami, okay.
Between the airports of Fort Lauderdale and Miami International. Please come visit us.
Okay.
You have fun.
So I recommend everyone to check it out. Gracie Diet, Gracie Mastermind with Master Rorion. Master, thank you so much for the time. It's
my pleasure, my friend.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Such a honor, and I'm very happy to do this. Let's connect again let's try to do this again sooner than later.
All right, fair enough. Thank you very much. Great success for you and all to your listeners, and a pleasure talking to you again.
Thank you, Master. Goodbye.
Bye now.